Carl and Lou here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it is the Nasties. We have to correct a mistake, basically. This should be episode 62, but it's not. It's episode 59, replacing episode 59 that was previously on YouTube. We've now pulled that video down because it was not a nasty. Yes, an accident somehow happened. We did the wrong Delirium. Yeah. We did an 80s Delirium, a giallo, and it turned out that wasn't the nasty. I don't know how that mistake happened. It was pointed out by a commentator on YouTube, and I remember reading that comment being like, what's he talking about? It's wrong. And then sort of something stuck in the back of my head, and I was like, let me look into this properly. And then I found out it was the case. The actual Delirium that is on the nasty list is a 1979 almost unknown movie kind of thing. Hard to find a good copy of. Yeah. And it was like, oh shit, we got to redo that one. Yep. So we're going back. Not going to make this 62, so it's going to be 59, replacing Delirium to do it correctly. It's the first time, considering we've got all the way to like the 60s, almost without having made a mistake in regards to copies, versions, or other detail. I think overall, I can live with one.
Considering the amount of different names these guys have, I'm guessing that's probably trying to get away with stuff. Different names. I
think it's just different. No, it tends to be different territories and different names more than anything else. But yeah, so we have gone back to do the correct Delirium. As I said, it is a 1979 American thriller. Not so much a horror movie, more of a thriller film, directed by Peter Morris and written by him and Richard Yalem. It also goes under the name of Psycho Puppet, which I can understand to a degree based around the plot of like... Well, the problem is the plot is so confusing regarding what one half of the movie is like and then the second half of the movie is like. It's, as I said, not to be confused with the 1987 film by Lamberto Bava that starred Serena Grandi, David Brannon, George Eastman and Daria Nicolodi. It's a shame that one had to come down because we can't even leave it up as like a horror movie review because it's all about the nasty sort of side of things. And I remember we talked about it and we didn't know specifically what nasty parts existed and we were kind of doing guesswork. It was like, well, because none of them actually did. No. It wasn't one of them. So this Delirium was released with 16 seconds cut in 1987. It's completely uncut now. It was not a prosecuted movie, unsurprisingly. You watch it, you can kind of understand that. The 16 seconds, you can kind of pick and choose sort of delay parts in regards to stab, like a stab through a door that goes through the chest, that kind of thing is easy little snippet bits here and there. But there's almost nothing really out there, crazy, over the top, dangerous. Like, that's clearly why this one was on the list. Yeah. I wonder if the kind of connotations towards Vietnam War was more of a thing that kind of caused an eyebrow to, not necessarily an eyebrow, but caught the attention of the censors. So the cast, it's Turk Chavoski as Paul Dollinger, Debbie Cheney as Susan Norcross, Terry Ten Brook as Larry Mead, Baron Winchester as Eric Stern, and Nick Panuzius as Charlie Gunther. There's a big cast, but that is the major cast because we're dealing with the detectives here, we're dealing with the lead woman, and we're dealing with the two men that kind of take on the villain role. The first one, who's just the kind of puppet, as it were. Yeah. And then the second one, which is the kind of army commander, general bloke, going on and leading the group. If you think, well, that sounds weird, it's very much it is. It's a post-Vietnam cop procedural film to a degree, where we do see a lot of cop-related stuff and talking in an office and elements like that. Weirdly enough, we kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. We thought it was kind of interesting at times because it felt very much like, okay, they're actually doing things by the book and all that and so on. It was funny because we'd end up watching another Nasty shortly afterwards that also had like cops that were good at their job, if that makes sense. So this was okay. It kind of mixes elements of like a vigilante conspiracy thriller with elements of a slasher flick. That's kind of what the first half is. Yeah. A slasher flick where this character, Charlie Gunther, kills this woman's roommate and then basically goes on a run. Yeah. And police are trying to find him and trying to find out why he's done what he did because he seemed like just a normal dude and why has he done what he did, and we kind of meet up with Charlie as he makes his way across the country, occasionally running into people and killing them. So that's kind of how that works. His part of the story then just randomly ends about halfway through because we had hints here and there where we kind of see this dark room with like these businessmen and this kind of like army dude, including like the music that you know, like army, like stock army music, military music, and they're talking about like Charlie and about their plan and so on. You kind of get an idea that like there's some sort of secret society that are trying to clean up the streets, which is basically what it is. I mean, we can tell you now, it's basically a group of Vietnam vets who created a secret society, and they recruit vets again, like who are hard up and so on, who then deliver punishment to criminals who have basically got away with for whatever reason, be it police screw ups or they were able to hide their crimes. They then met out the punishment, decide it and stuff like that. Judge, jury, executioner, all the whole thing. Charlie, he was the latest one, but he was a little bit too unhinged, a little bit too dangerous, and he ended up killing someone that didn't deserve to be killed. And that's it. So they were also kind of looking for him, and they're led, like I said, by this is Eric Stern, the actor's Baron Winchester, who's an intense one. Problem is, we've seen his character time and time again. You know, he's shouty, he's over the top, he wears mirrored sunglasses even in a dark room. He's that kind of thing. He's the Full Metal Jacket guy. Toned down a hell of a lot compared to that. Who was the actor who does that? I forget.
Oh, he's been quite a bit, isn't he?
He's passed away now, I think, believe that, you know, but Charlie suffers a lot from PTSD, basically. You kind of feel like there might be a statement about PTSD and war and things like that, but the film isn't nuanced enough for that, unfortunately. It's exploitation. It's 70s exploitation, and it kind of plays out that way. That PTSD is used as an excuse almost to justify his run, because that's it. It's so random. Charlie's kind of attack. It's the woman in the car. He steals a car, picks up a woman in the car as a hitchhiker, and then like her behaviour kind of triggers him in some way. She actually does survive, but then he ends up at a farmhouse.
We judged her behaviour of like he starts speeding up.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, stop the car." And then when he does slow down, give enough time to get away, she doesn't go away from him. Like she doesn't get herself out of that situation. And it's like, you've got to have some sort of believability of... She's scared by his driving. When he does stop, get away from that man.
The only thing I would say is we're not at this time, but we were coming out of peace and love period, and there was still a lot of trust and element like that. We put modern senses of head onto stuff that, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing.
I think it's ridiculous.
All right, well, ridiculous might be a strong word, right?
I think it is.
Okay. So the group, obviously, they set out to kill anyone who also might threaten to expose them, because they're secret, underground thing kind of stuff. But one of them happens to be like the boss of Susan Norcross, but it's her roommate that's killed by Charlie. So the police are constantly interviewing him because they think there's a link, because Charlie came to him for a job. So the link is this: Charlie came to Susan's boss for a job, and in his company, whatever it is. He didn't give it to him, but obviously he saw an opportunity to use him in the society, and that's the link there. That's where it is, and they're trying to constantly cover it up. Anyone that might get close to them, they end up killing. Susan Norcross is one of the major characters of it. She ends up meeting the detectives Paul Dollinger and Larry Mead. Larry's the one she ends up falling. They fall in love with each other, isn't it? Yeah, it is, because he's the younger one, and they're investigating the murders, but they're kind of one step behind, like Charlie, all the time. But they aren't convinced. For some reason, it's never explained really well. They aren't convinced by Susan's boss, like that he has more going on. He just seemed to go, I have a hunch. Let's go back and interview him. And I'm like, you're hassling them now. Like, you've got nothing to go on. You can't just keep turning it and go, you can't do like that kind of thing. But the movie then changes on a bit of a sudden moment where we get to this farmhouse bit that we mentioned a moment ago, and Charlie goes there and there's a woman there, it's, you know, some boobs, and she's in the shower and stuff like that, and he sneaks in the house, and you think we're just doing standard slasher stuff here. He tries to attack her, she shotguns him, she kills him, like, and we both like, that's kind of cool, you know. And it's like, you know, you break into like a farmhouse in rural, wherever it was, America, in America, you're highly likely going to get shot. Particularly as he's got a knife at this point as well. But we were like, okay.
That's good.
Now what? It was a bit like that. Then, like I said, this is where the movie really grinds to a halt, because we basically just get conversations. The detectives find out that Charlie's dead. But they won't let it drop, and they're wondering why he went this way and stuff like that. They're quite insistent on investigating it further, particularly as Larry ends up using Susan in a way as they start to date, to sort of like, oh, keep an eye on your boss. She overhears a conversation on the phone where he's talking to the secret society, and then it's them just talking in the dark room where they're like, oh, we need to keep... And some of some of the men are getting a little bit like, what's the word I'm looking for? Antsy about it, a little bit like cold feet, as it were, about what they're doing and things like that. So that does eventually lead to Stern kind of going crazy and turning on the rest of them, and a big shootout. And this is when the cops have now finally figured it all out. They've worked it out and have followed them to this warehouse where it is, basically. Susan's gone there first. Crazily, Susan goes there first and like sneaks around trying to find stuff and all that, making a ton of noise as well. Yeah. And like it does lead to Stern kind of... And it's an unusual ending where he basically reverts back to Vietnam days. We see him having flashbacks and stuff like that. It's stock footage of like helicopters and shit like that. Charlie had the same ones throughout the movie. And then he kind of gets other ammo belts and guns. And we get a very protracted, long-winded shootout where lots of cops get killed and he's like screaming and shouting about it and things like that. He even ends up on a freeway at a certain point. It's really long, not particularly exciting, you know, but it inevitably ends with him getting shot and killed at the end, and that's it. And then that's the end of your movie and you're like, okay, all right, it's a perfectly fine ending. The problem is that they turn him into the big ending, and we couldn't understand, and I stand by this, why that wasn't Charlie. Why wasn't that Charlie? Now, not necessarily as the leader, but have Charlie tell this PTSD story. Have this Charlie rampage across this thing. You could have Charlie eventually realising that he's thinking or believing that he's been manipulated by the secret society. So returning there to kill them all, to get revenge for what he thinks they did to him. Believing that they are in some way, like I said, related to his experiences in Vietnam. Going there, killing them all. The cops all arrive. Then we have the Charlie shootout. Then you get into the bit at the end where Charlie's on the ground and dying, and there's almost a sympathy thing for him because he's just a victim of a war, of PTSD, of, you know, a horrendous experience. That to me would have made more sense. But instead, we kind of get the Charlie stuff to just slasher, bog standard slasher stuff. He gets killed, and then we're focusing on all this talking and all this. Let's be honest, not even that good subterfuge. Because like the boss, for example, Susan's boss, is making phone calls to the Secret Society from his work phone that's connected to his secretary's desk.
You can hear it all,
Like, you know, at any point she could. Why are you doing that? It's not good subterfuge. We also not really get an example or an experience of how wide-ranging the society is. We get conversations between the cops about linking like dead bodies or deaths in other states and stuff like that to them. It was not even so much seeing them, but I would have preferred like an idea, an example of maybe cutting in sequences that are a minute long of other people working for them and killing, like having some bloke coming out of court or like reading a newspaper saying so and so gets away with it, and then and he gets like strangled or something. You know, like those elements. I think that would have made it a bit more interesting and believe that they were quite influential. Because the other problem as well, aside from Susan's boss who just owns a company, we have no details about the rest of them. How are they like big figures in society? You know what I mean? Like, here's a mayor. State that. Make that clear that this is a mayor. Here's someone from the government, for example. Like, make it seem like these are big deal people. So when, like you said, when Stern has this kind of psychotic break at the end, as well, like he's also wiping out some quite important people. All these things I think could have made this a better film. It's not a bad movie overall. It's just kind of okay. It's one of those nasties where you're like, there's almost very little to actually look at and say it's nasty. I think it's likely to have been the first death in the movie when Charlie kills Susan's roommate because you get a knife through the back of a door that goes for her chest, kind of comes out near her breast. That thing. Looks alright, looks fine. It's a low budget movie, what you're going to expect. Some of the gore, like in regards to like when Charlie gets shot with a shotgun, it's a bit bloody. But again, that's nothing. That's tame shit, you know what I mean? Like looking at the year of this, it's 1979. It was much heavier stuff going on. I just think it lacks nuance, you know, lacks detail and feels like two separate movies jammed together. And rather than like a coherent, here's a story. The only thing that links the two parts when it comes down to it is Susan. But even then, she's not a big part of the first time. It takes ages for her to really step into that lead role because we have such focus on Charlie. I don't know, like I said, it's a shame because the other Delirium, the wrong Delirium, was way more entertaining. But this is just a movie, you know? You got any other thoughts on it?
No, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. It was just felt very dry. I said the talking parts. Yeah, didn't like it.
Stole. There you go. That's the actual Delirium from 1979. You got any thoughts on it? You know what to do. Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?